All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for making it back from lunch. This is always a tough time slot. My name's Emily Lovell, and
I'm Silas Morgan.
We're going to talk to you today about Contributor Catalyst, which is a new HBCU mentorship program that helps students learn about open source. So a little bit more about us. I am the Associate Director of the Open Source Program Office at the University of California at Santa Cruz. I'm also the program lead for this program called Contributor Catalyst. And I previously was on faculty at Berea College, which is a small liberal arts college.
And I am a graduate student at Norfolk State University, the first HBCU to be involved with the Contributor Catalyst program. I was a participant for the pilot cohort in 2023, and I am now a two-time alumni mentor. And through the program, I've been contracted to work with the Processing Foundation, and yeah.
Which you're going to hear more about really shortly.
Yes.
So we're going to start by telling you a little bit about the program, and then I'm going to hand it over to Silas to share some of his personal experience and perspective as a new contributor and going through the program. So the motivation for this program, my background has been working in diversity, equity, and inclusion in computing for a long time. And in particular, this program, the motivation was the science and engineering talent gap disproportionately affecting Black and African Americans. So the chart at right is pulled from a National Science Board report, which makes this just very abundantly clear if you're not already familiar with the data. And I'm clearly a white woman, but I did have a sort of a team of collaborators that I was working with who were in one camp teaching open source, who were in another camp faculty at HBCUs, which are historically Black colleges and universities. And then also, we all really were invested in this same goal of broadening who's participating in computing. So together, we wanted to move the needle in this one area of open source software contribution with this program. And why open source? I probably don't have to tell you, you're all here at Open Source Summit, but I do want to share a little bit about why I'm so passionate about introducing students to open source, which is that it's like such a great way for them to build a public-facing technical portfolio that will just live with them forever and shows like not just the code that they can write, but also that they are growing the capacity to navigate large code bases and have these really complicated conversations in digital spaces and writing, which is its own challenge. So I think that's really important. It also gives them a lot of experience with real tools and technologies that are used every day in the workforce that they might not have access to in their classes. And they also get to choose where to put their time, right? Like you can go impact anything you care about through open source work. So I think that's really cool too. And on top of that, so I had been teaching open source before working on this program in a classroom context. And mentorship became a focus because on top of the integrating students in open source, I think mentorship can amplify this experience of being part of a community, which we're on day 3, so I think you've heard this from a lot of people now. Like we all know the importance of feeling like you belong somewhere, like someone notices that you're there and appreciates that. So mentorship was a nice other layer for that. So in designing the program, I partnered with a faculty member, one of Silas's professors actually, Dr. Thorna Humphreys, at Norfolk State University. And so she helped, design a program that would work for her students. So her sort of wish list that she pitched was that she thought it was really important that there was an in-person component where the students are spending time on the UC Santa Cruz campus. So that means they're getting sort of contact with Silicon Valley professionals and, technical exposure in industry side. Also, they're getting to meet grad students and faculty and learn about, potential graduate career path in computing. Secondly, she thought it was really important that there was a cohort model where students would come not just by themselves, but they would come in sort of a pod of students from the same university. So students who have shared identity, shared experience, shared sort of regional context. Santa Cruz has a very small Black population, so I think this is especially a critical part of this program to help students not feel so isolated. And also on the wish list was having faculty visits. So being able to actually build deeper relationships across our institutions. So that's something we were able to do in year one, and we're hoping to do again, to have HBCU faculty come to our campus. And recently I was able to go to Norfolk State, to Silas' school, to work with faculty there. So on top of that, we just had a few things from UC Santa Cruz that we tried to add to the program design. We wanted to have flexibility around other summer opportunities and obligations. If students wanted to spend time with their family, if they were a caretaker or, so we made the in-person component condensed to just allow more flexibility. We also built a hybrid work environment into the program so students could get the experience of working both remotely on Zoom and Slack, as a lot of collaboration happens, but also in person in a lab together. And then finally, on the UC Santa Cruz side, we wanted to add additional network building and skill building opportunity through a paid chance to, a fully paid trip to a conference. So all of the students who complete the program have had the opportunity to attend All Things Open, which also happens closer to their home schools. And then of course, Silas is here with me now to talk at Open Source Summit. So what we came up with was an 8-week summer program that starts 1 week remote. So this, we meet on Zoom. We talk about stuff like we develop and refine our own code of conduct for the program. We learn about other projects' code of conducts. We start learning about open source culture and stuff like that. Students then come and spend 4 weeks in person in Santa Cruz on our campus. And then we do another 3 weeks remote after that, back to working on Slack and Zoom. Sort of thematically, the first half of that time is learning how to open source. So some of the stuff I mentioned, culture, but also learning tools, learning how to use Git. A lot of the Git content I think is new for most students coming into the program. We also do a lot of research on communities. What sort of community or project would you like to work in? The second half of the program then, students actually contribute to an open source project. So the students together make a choice, they campaign sort of amongst the cohort, and then decide where to put their effort for the rest of the time. And during that time, they also have just continued support from me as a mentor, and then also now from Silas as a mentor, which he'll be able to share more about in a moment. And then logistically, what that looks like in person, we're doing really hands-on stuff in lab together. We're also doing community building, going on a hike together, exploring the Bay Area a little bit. And then again, like I said, remotely, we're collaborating on Zoom and Slack. We also have a lot of guest mentors who show up throughout the program. If that's something that you in this room are interested in doing, you could volunteer to come and do a Q&A or a short session with the students. So we've had a lot of people from the open source community participate that way. We also fully fund everything, so travel, housing, bus passes, all of the time in Santa Cruz, plus that conference opportunity. It's a pretty much full-time commitment. And we do also work very closely with our campus African, Black, and Caribbean Student Success Center, and they are able to link us in with a lot of the local ABC student community and also with other visiting HBCU students. So through our relationship with them, we've been able to, they do a welcome tour and lunch every year. And we've also been able to do some cool things, like we went and worked in the campus Black Lives Matter garden the first year, and that was a really cool experience for the cohort too. So these are just some pictures of what this looks like, sort of the two modalities of our community building. So getting to know each other on Zoom and then getting together in person. This was on a day trip up to San Francisco to visit a UCSC alum, Sean Smith with the sunglasses, at his company. This is last year, so working in the lab, you can see they've whiteboarded out there, which sort of debating which community we're going to work in. And on Zoom again, hiking in Big Sur. And then this is this year's cohort that just started last week, and they're actually flying to Santa Cruz today. Half of them delayed, so please put some good vibes into the universe for them. But this is this year's cohort, and this is us actually Zooming with them from Monday to share a little bit about the conference. And Silas is going to share a lot more detail about what it's like in the program, but just at a very high level, some of the things that students have worked on are documentation. That's a great place to start. A lot of us talk about that. But also language translation. We had a student who did a lot of language translation the first year of the program. Writing new examples for newcomers to a particular project, and also doing a lot of impressive advocacy in addition to the technical contributions. In one case, to fix a 6-year-old issue that Silas is going to tell you all about. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Silas to tell you about his experience.
Okay. Thank you, Emily. So I'll just start off with my experience as a participant. So when I first started with the Contributor Catalyst program, I didn't know anything about open source. It was something completely new to me. I had only done a day worth of research before really diving into it. Through the program, though, I got very comfortable with it. You know, the workflow, we did guided activities. We worked in our own repository doing mock pull requests and opening our own issues to work on. And we researched some projects, found out how to identify a good project that correlated with our own values and our interests. And we, as a group, landed on P5JS. We started off working as a group, looking at some issues and opening some group pull requests, just learning what kind of information to include. And then we started to work on our own pull requests. And you'll see one of mine up next. Okay, well, first I'm going to talk about what P5JS is. It's essentially a coding library for JavaScript that is very beginner friendly, it's very creative, and it allows new coders to make something that's interesting to them and visually appealing. Some of its core values include prioritizing accessibility and maintaining a learner's or growth mindset throughout your entire experience in open source. Okay, so my first big solo pull request was a code issue. It was pertaining to line endings on Windows devices, and it was kind of something that 3 out of 4 of the participants in our cohort were experiencing issues with. So the issue was opened by another contributor. I had some conversation with them, and they allowed me to take on that issue and start working on a solution. I proposed adding a file called get attributes, which converted the line endings to LF instead of having them be modified to CRLF, which was causing us to fail some NPM testing. So I had found get attributes from another project we worked on called GitKit on GitLabs, and we had worked with them. That was one of the activities we worked with when learning how to work with GitHub. And I got permission from those maintainers to use that file, and I modified it to work for the issue that we were experiencing. And I was able to get it resolved in 2 weeks. And the issue was, it was 5 years old at the time. And yeah. So here you'll just see a bit about the solution I proposed. So this first is the issue that another contributor opened. And then on the right, you'll see some of the conversation that I had and me linking to my pull request. This is kind of the predecessor. This is the pull request from 5 years prior in 2018 that had been closed just because there wasn't enough information about it, and it wasn't really affecting enough users at that time. Everyone was either on Mac or Linux. And then this is my pull request. So I included a lot of information about why we were having issues and how get attributes could fix that. I had provided an article from some research I had done. I gave co-authorship to the people who had made the file initially, and Sakani was one of the initial reviewers of my solution, and he helped me get it passed. Okay, and this is just a little bit of the conversation, so kind of advocating for that pull request to be accepted. I was talking to 2 maintainers at the time, and I had pulled in the person who opened the issue and had them test it. You don't see this, but I also had another one of our cohort members, Aaron, test it as well, and he posted screenshots of it working for him. And then this is the solution. So on the left, this is the original file. It's much longer than what you see. And on the right, you have the complete file that I had added that fixed the issue. And the highlighted lines are the lines that I personally wrote and that directly fixed the issue. Okay, so I'm going to share some thoughts just as a new contributor who ended up sticking around with P5JS. So kind of some things you can do to attract new contributors is kind of make your project inviting. I'm not going to go through everything, but kind of having documents geared towards the newcomers, like contributor guidelines, doc style guides, so if they're making documentation contributions, and setting up good first issues, definitely some good signs. And for your maintainers, you want to make yourselves known and be encouraging, just so any new contributors can reach out to you and get feedback. You want to have open communication channels. This would look like having a Discord or a Slack that new contributors can join and kind of get ingrained within the project. Also, meetings are a very good idea to keep them in the loop and keep them updated. And you kind of want to think about inclusion in terms of attracting new contributors, but also keeping them. So some ways you can keep new contributors are to invest in them. So you can do things like set up mentorship, contract them if possible, and you want to respond to their pull requests in a timely manner. One of the unconferences I went to, we kind of brought up this solution about prioritizing new contributors' pull requests and maybe like within a week or two giving them that feedback, and that will help them stick around more. Also using updated communication methods like Discord. A lot of the younger generation will be using Discord, or they'll have some experience with it. And yeah, just prioritizing new contributor pull requests. So how P5JS kept me engaged. First, through acknowledgement. So they added me and my cohort to their contributor list. They accepted my changes. And if there was an issue, they had a conversation with me about how I could modify my pull request and get it accepted. And then the P5JS lead at the time had reached out to our cohort and the program personally and thanked us for our contribution and met with us. And that was very, pretty amazing. Then they contracted me. They invited me to work on their new project, P5JS 2.0, which was their latest large project they were working on.
Yeah, round of applause.
Thank you. So during that, they provided one-on-one mentorship. They helped me kind of organize my solution and make a schedule for it to keep me on track and make sure everything I was doing was in line with how they had their files structured and everything. So that was very helpful. And then I will pass it back on to Emily.
Yeah, so what is the impact? Well, first I want to hype Silas a little bit more because I think he's thank you. I think he's underselling himself a little bit, very humble, but I hold this up as an example. Not every example is going to be this example, but I show people the open conversation that he had with the P5 maintainers because I think it demonstrates so many powerful things about the impact of involving students in open source and giving them the mentorship support to succeed. That now is a living resume for Silas of the way he navigated that involved so much deep detective work. He was it was solving a crime. There was a string from here to here. Literally, if you can go snoop on his GitHub account, you'll see he was linking please see issue 17 from the 2018 or whatever, and then he was tagging the original contributor who was located somewhere else in the world. Can't believe that person popped back up, right? And just like really, really incredible the way all those things came together. And like huge credit to Silas, because I think it would not have gone that way if he had not like engaged all these people in this particular way, and then gotten the cohort involved. Like all the guys were sitting in our lab, like commenting on the same pull request, like I tested it too, didn't work for me, like, you know. So like, and then in the process, they're all building up each other's like visibility on GitHub. So you can even use within program, you can work to do that for each other, lift each other up. So yeah, I just wanted to like call out like how cool I think that is. I also think that we've talked about this a little bit between ourselves. That is kind of interesting. We think a lot about inclusion and welcoming spaces. And this bug that Silas fixed it was like an inclusion issue. Like it was affecting all Windows users.
Yeah. So anyone on Windows would have had like an issue trying to run the test to get their pull requests accepted. So this kind of mitigated that, and it provides a much smoother process to anyone on Windows. So that's like a large community that is now more easily able to contribute to P5JS.
Definitely. And I think like we've also talked, you know, between ourselves about how I think this is also a cool example of how even if you feel really new in a community, or you are really new in a community, you can still have something to offer, because we didn't really know our way around yet. We were just like reading the docs and setting up the dev environment, literally setting up the dev environment when we hit this issue. And then Silas is like, wait a minute, didn't we just see this? Like, I think I have a solution. And I said, cool, go work it up, and let's talk about it and submit it. And we did. And I think it's like another really nice example of how you can like be new to a community. And if you do your research and you understand the community and approach it with like respect and like thoughtfulness and like humility, that you can totally make like a really impactful contribution. So to this day, you have Silas Morgan to thank if you are a Windows user who's developing in P5. So I think that's like the direct impact of this, you know, particular pull request, but hopefully exemplifies many things we're trying to share. You have anything else to add?
Not yet, but maybe towards the end when we're having a conversation.
Yeah, well, we're going to leave some time for questions. So, you know, talking about the impact, like I could fill 5 slides with quotes, like the students blog throughout the program. They surprise me every year with the things they share about their experience. But this is just one quote that I pulled out, which I thought was especially meaningful, where a student says, "I assumed that professional coders were knowledgeable about every aspect of their field." Yeah, y'all know the truth, right? Over the course of the summer, I began to realize that being a programmer means encountering problems you haven't had the faintest idea about where to start, and then slowly working towards finding a solution. This seems much more realistic and feasible to me now. So if students are going to take away something from this program, from working with me, from being mentored by Silas, like this is it. This is what I want them to take away. Like the technology is always going to be changing, but being able to like learn how to be productively lost, how to help find the next right person or the next resource, I think is really critical. And feeling like you can do it. Like nobody else knows any more than you do. We are always figuring it out. So just another sort of shout out to some things that alumni have done. You can see here another one of our alumni, Onexi Medina, was on Phil Robb and Ildiko Vansha's podcast, which was super cool. So you can find that on YouTube. So they've been on podcasts. They have returned to mentor their peers, been offered paid work in open source, spoken at conferences, Open Source Summit in FOSSI, and also credited the program. Like I get emails about like, this inspired me to apply for graduate school or to go after this job, or I had a student who got a job offer recently with a higher salary than me, and I was like, yes. I was like, I am so proud of you. So I think that, and they come back and they say like, these are skills that I was, you know, really helped me in my interview process. So yeah, just really cool to get to be a part of that. Oops, that was a spoiler. Oh, I'm missing a slide. So somehow my slide fell out, but I was going to share that we through the work of this program and through pilot feedback from Silas's year 1 cohort, we initially secured a $1 million grant from the National Science Foundation. Thank you. Yeah, this is really exciting. So super fortunate to be a part of that, and we were planning to expand the program starting this year over the next 2 years after, so 3-year expansion, to bring on more HBCUs and more pods of students and more peer mentors like Silas. The spoiler is that we now need your help because our funding was terminated in April, along with a lot of other NIH and NSF funding that targeted, unfortunately, especially work in diversity, equity, and inclusion. So without a new funding source, the future of this program is very uncertain. So I'm not expecting anyone in here to have the magic check, but if you do, please come talk to me. If you have $1 million to spare, we would love it. But if you have advice, if you have network, if you know someone who might want to support in some smaller way, or if you want to support in some smaller way through, offering time with the students or offering to host us at your Bay Area company in the next month for an afternoon while the students are visiting, please reach out, because we really want to keep the program going now that we've hit this point where we're getting a lot more referrals from student to student and all of that. Yeah, and kind of related to that, I wanted to share this before we wrap up, since we're at an open source conference, and this is there's a lot of open science happening around grants now. So if you're not personally affected by what's going on right now, you may not be paying attention. And this is just my ask to those of you who are here to please pay attention with us and help speak up and advocate for this kind of work. Because Noam Ross, who's at our Open Sci, has been doing awesome, heartbreaking and moving analysis of these award terminations. And he's been reaching out individually to people who are on these grants like myself to ask us to report our data to these open databases. And this is a word cloud that he generated when he went and crawled all the abstracts of the terminated grants. And I don't know whether this information is surprising to you, but I just ask you to take it in and to be in community with us as we all try to keep doing this work. So on that note, I hope that we can all keep working together to make open source more inclusive for new contributors. And I think now we will
open to questions.
Take questions. This one? Yeah, and go follow Noam Ross if you want to follow what's happening with the grant funding right now. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And to bring you back up maybe a little bit, you can connect with us both, and you can also find some articles and podcasts and things about the program there too.
Yeah, and our GitHubs.
Yeah, yeah. You can also find our GitHub repos.
Sorry, I didn't see who was first. Is this? Oh, no.
I thought you normally had someone who walked around.
Thank you so much. This was awesome and inspiring in a time that we need that, obviously. I'm really curious about something that you sort of led with, cooperatively developing a code of conduct. I'd love to hear sort of both sides of how that went for you and maybe even what motivated that, because I have not heard of such a thing.
Do you want to start?
Yeah, I'll make it brief. Yeah, I'm going to make my side brief because Silas was really involved actually in that first year. I think for me, it was just being in the DEI space. I think codes of conduct are really important. I look for them at events that I go to. I look for them in any open source community I want to join. I ask my students to look for them when they look at open source projects. So I just thought if we're our own community, then it seems like it should follow that we should have a code of conduct. So, and we had, at year 1 of the program, we had a GitHub repo that was an empty folder. And honestly, I was I don't know what's going to live here yet, but I feel we should just start setting the tone for our community. And Silas was a really big part of that, and a really big part of that first code of community. So he can speak more about what that process was.
So it started with a lot of collaboration. So being for students from an HBCU going like all the way across the country, you know, there are a lot of things that you think about and worry about. So we wanted to make sure that we kind of set up a code of conduct to establish a set of like procedures for when things might happen, and just kind of ensure that our diverse perspective is being, you know, taken into consideration. And yeah, I think that's mostly it.
Yeah, the one thing I'll add to that, well, two things actually. One is that year one, it was like I had allocated like 30 minutes and we spent like 4 hours on it or something. It was like, but I was like, cool, like we're having discussion, like I'm not gonna cut this off. So it was super valuable. The other thing I was gonna add, just to expand on Silas's point, is like we talked about, you know, reporting, because there's a lot of codes of conduct that do not include how to report if there's an issue. And so they did research, they looked at some model codes of conduct. You can go see, ours was put together from some notable examples. But then we also added, like, I don't remember if it's our code of conduct or on our page, but we added specifically reporting and contacts, including contacts that were not me and were not other program staff. So like we included like our ABC student success team on that contact list.
And also now myself being a peer mentor, I try to make myself a open space for any uncomfortable conversations that any of the students might want to have.
Hi, this is great. I'm so excited. Thank you. I'm coming from the Bloomberg Open Source Program Office, and I'm really curious to know how companies might be able to get involved with this type of work.
Yeah, I think it can look different ways. So we have been having like early conversations with some of our existing industry partners about like, obviously we're looking for money. So like having any sort of financial support, but I think we're looking for deeper than like just financial relationships. So like that could be like, oh, it depends on how involved companies want to be. Like if they have somebody who wants to come and like help coach students on like technical interviews or like do mock interviews, or maybe would be interested in interviewing our students for opportunities. Like those are all possible as well. So I think like both sharing mentorship experience, you know, like Q&A, ask me anything type stuff, hosting us at your company if you're local, or working on deeper partnerships around, you know, internship or workforce pathways are all possibilities. Yeah. But if you have another idea that I haven't thought of, I would love to hear that too.
Hello. So I'm actually about to start being a mentor for the Linux kernel mentorship program. And one question I've had this for quite some time, is most of the mentorship programs seem to be nonprofit. I wanted to know about how would it even be possible, in your perspective, to do a for-profit mentorship program? Yeah, just what are your thoughts on something like that?
That's a good question. Like where the model would be that people would pay to participate, or?
No. So I was thinking that companies often are looking for employees in the future. And then the mentorship programs give people like a body of work.
Yep.
And so I feel like companies would be willing to pay at least something if they were like guaranteed, maybe they could get a good employee out of it in the future. I'm not sure how a contract like that would even work, but it just seems like there's value to be added in adding more programmers or coders into the industry. And I feel like there could be something, but I don't know necessarily why that doesn't already exist. And so maybe I was just hoping, you have a lot of experience, especially with your mentorship program, what you would think like issues would be in something like that.
Yeah, I mean, we would love that. Like if anyone here wants to hire Silas, like talk to him before the end of the conference. Yeah, I would love to see my students like find placement in companies that we could partner with. So I guess it hadn't occurred to me to think about that as like a for-profit model. But like, absolutely, I think we're definitely interested in helping like wear that path more. Yeah.
Sorry. Thanks. Which one? What?
Oh, okay. What's happening? I just had actually a follow-up question or clarifying question for you. What would be the nuance between this for-profit mentorship and an apprenticeship or an internship?
So certainly in an internship, you're working with the company that you are going to be hired by. So this would be different in the sense that you are in the mentorship program, developing on some random repository or program, not necessarily associated with the specific company that you're going to be working with. Yeah, it's more about demonstrating that you have the skills to contribute to a complex project, which I think it seems that companies would want that. And so, yeah, I think that would be kind of the difference. Sorry to kind of take over, I guess.
No, I appreciate the discussion. Thank you.
I was going to say, I think we have 5 more minutes left. And so I saw 2 questions. All right, I just want to make sure I didn't miss anybody.
I'm curious to know if you have any, once you decide on the project, if there's any space for making a constructed agreement with them, so that what if it was a completely unresponsive project, what would you have done in that type of situation? So I'm wondering if any sort of programmatic outreach looks like for the project, and to ensure that it's going to be a useful experience for the students.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. I think this program strikes a fine balance of I really want the students to feel ownership over the choice of where we work. And I think that's something that I have been able to protect, was able to protect with our funding source before, at least. And wanted them to go through that whole vetting process, but it's very scaffolded. So I do assign them go research communities you might just find interesting, bring them back to the team. Also, here's a short list of communities that either I've worked in, I know someone who's worked in, I know someone who's a maintainer. So there, I do sort of encourage students to move towards communities that I know are going to be really welcoming and active. And that's some of the stuff that they look for that I assign is go look at are they actually emerging PRs? Is there friendly discussion happening? So we haven't had it happen yet. And not I also, when I was teaching semester long courses, I haven't had it happen yet that things have just stalled, but it's because I assign the students to do a lot of that legwork and research. And then also I reach out behind the scenes to the maintainers or community managers to say, I have this many students, is it okay with you? Do you have the bandwidth to support us if we show up? Because I do also am aware that it is a lot of work to onboard new contributors, and so I try to be mindful of that as well.
Yeah, I just want to say congratulations, well done. On both folks. I think, certainly your generation, I'm not going to date myself. I did have a computer, let's just say that. How it got connected to the internet is another thing, but I think a lot about the fact that, you're very powerful, very socially conscious generation. And I think I'm very curious for if you could design your dream contribution experience, because what happens right now is it's kind of structured in a way that may not be as friendly for folks who might be looking to contribute. What would that be, or what could you kind of say, well, hey, this would actually improve just having more of your generation contribute and be a part of open source, because maybe how it exists today may not feel as welcoming. I'm not sure.
So I think it's kind of split between what needs to change. So there's a lot within the projects that can change, kind of making themselves more open to new contributors, and kind of working on response times and some of the stuff that I said earlier. But there's also kind of the mindset around open source that is affecting a lot of my peers. Within the, I guess, university structure, there's not really much emphasis on open source at all. It's more talking about internships and stuff like that. I think maybe if there was maybe some more structure within like the path of how to get introduced to open source and how to like stay within open source and like get some sort of mutual benefit that would definitely like boost a lot of the engagement from my generation. So, yes. Okay. Thank you guys for coming.